One abstention.
Eric.
Yeah. Okay. You abstained on the consent.
I did,
agenda.
yes.
Yeah.
You're ready, I mean, I'll say it too.
Okay, we're ready? Okay. We did the pledge of allegiance again?
You call
Okay,
You just
good.
call to order.
Just call order. Okay, I call our work session to order at 6:03 p.m. on April 16th. Any additions or deletions to our work session?
I think because it just says district property, I do have some updates on Cloverdale as well that I'd like to share with the board, but I think the,
That covers district property.
yeah, the agenda covers it all.
I move we approve the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so I'm gonna pass out a packet and I'll chat about things as we go to get you guys informed, so.
Well, wait, before you start, any
Oh,
community comments?
No further.
All right.
So I got, we actually had 4 realtors respond with some proposals, for the, representing the board. Their commissions, aren't enough like doing a RFP like we've done with a construction project, but it's enough that we needed 3 bids, so we got 4. So I think there's some discretion on the board's part to look through to decide how the board wants to move forward. With general RFP process, we typically have some questions and we interview people kind of to talk. You can see that some people, I think, thought that might be the next step, so there's a wide variety of, some are pretty skeleton as far as their proposal. And want to engage more because quite honestly, this property on front is a bit of a unicorn, right? It's a big property with a big existing building. So I think you'd see that in one of there's some variance in what people think it's worth versus what it could be worth. So I think there's some dialogue to have with the board about, is it an interview with the whole board? Is it 2 of the board members meeting with the group and bringing a recommendation back to the board? What does that look like? So I think, part of this is time giving you to read through, having dialogue about concerns, questions in the packets. And then, so that's phase 1. The other is for me to update the board. So our partners with Heart of Oregon, I was actually just at their celebration this morning, their breakfast. They anticipate breaking ground and construction in phase 1 of their project and actually vacating the Cloverdale property after next year. So not 25-26, but the 26-27 school year. That being said, we also have someone who is connected out there that's interested in that property. And there's some challenges with that property. So one, there's a rider on it that says it can only be used for educational purposes. So a quick claim process would have to be done with a land use attorney to get that property free and cleared. There's asbestos on the property. There's no well on the property. There's an oil furnace on the existing home. So I'm currently working with our attorney because we received a letter from the adjacent property owner who basically hired a land use attorney to communicate with us because they're interested in it. They are challenging whether we have rights for it, whether it's currently being used for educational purposes. That being said, this was a more formalized letter than I was expecting. However, I had an informal conversation with the property owner who was interested. It was intended to be a nudge to move the process forward, is what I'm hearing. But it was a little alarming to get a letter from an attorney saying, we are not sure you have rights to that property. So I think in that circumstance, I actually believe, right now it's great for a partnership, but I don't see that being, it's a 2-acre piece of property that the property has some real challenges. And so I think, my recommendation will be, again, and this is the time to have question and answer about that before we make a decision, but I would be requesting that the board give me permission to work with that process to look at a reasonable transfer, if possible, of that property. You know, looking at the value versus the work it will take to mitigate asbestos, right? It's actually lead paint and the paint in the building. I mean, there's a lot of challenges to that building that really don't make it an asset for us right now. And so trying to work through that process with them. So again, that will be another piece that will be coming up a little earlier than I anticipated because we got a letter from their attorney. We believe it is currently being used as for educational purpose because we certified the credits for all the kids who are working out at Heart of Oregon for when they return to their home school, some including ours. 3 of the student speakers today were from sisters that are participating in Heart of Oregon. So very much it is being used for educational purposes. That being said, I believe there is a win-win path forward that could be discussed with this party as we
So
go.
that's the party interested is the neighbor.
Yeah.
So, are we in process with an attorney doing a quick claim deed to get?
We
that off?
no. So we started looking at that process with a land use attorney that was under the ESD's guys. In that budget change last year that went away, we basically were doing the research on it. I believe part of that negotiation would be their land use attorney would finish that process. Would be a part of any agreement that we would put place. If we did that, then that would be money, then we would have to take that off of the value of the property as well, right? That would be part of the cost of
What's the
that
cost?
process. Well, however long it takes an attorney at $300 an hour to do that work. So it'll be significant. I mean,
But we now have some leverage.
yes.
In
So
terms of-
again,
If I agree, but we work together.
Yeah.
I don't know more than that at this point. I've also reached out to some of these realtors to give us an evaluation of that property, so we know what an overall value would be to start with, even with the net negatives we know are existing, and what does that look like? And so we're working on that process. We're very early. I think it was my welcome back from spring break letter was a letter from an attorney, so it was fantastic. But
I think that's a really weird way to say I'm interested in your property.
well, again, I agree. I'm trying to
Like,
be politically correct in how in my conversation with our counsel, this person has, the attorney has a reputation for being much more aggressive than she was in the letter to us. And so, when our attorney read it, she went, yeah, this just means she wants to talk. This isn't, I mean, it freaked me out, but so, and again, to be fair, he also did come in on his own and we met and had a conversation. So, yeah, it is a weird next step, but, at the same point, I'd rather try to work with a person than work against them, and especially if we don't have a long-term use for that property, which once Heart of Oregon moves, we won't.
So,
And having been in that building as a user, putting together proposals there, it would be really limited as to who could use it if we were, or have somebody else. We were there, the other children's organization was there, for a while, but it definitely is. It
Yeah.
would be really a challenge for anybody else to want to use it.
Yeah, I think we used it as a preschool for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
been through some mixed use. So again, this is, well,
it's
actually,
probably a scraper.
I think they had interest in making it into a farm stand, which would be so that you would kind of gut a lot of it and use it as a covered structure. Challenges for us, and again, no decisions right now, but this is the time for that Q&A about how or where or why or what could we use it for? You know, at one point, I had a vision of, could we use it for housing? However, again, you have to invest in mitigating all the lead paint. Or probably you would have to actually tear the structure down.
You have to, yeah.
And it mitigate all the biohazards. You would have to put a well in. And hopefully that well would meet the requirements for whatever you were going to put on the property. So there would be considerable investment. And I'm not sure that that's in lieu of other properties that the district has. I'm not sure that's the best use of what we're doing. So, I did look back, we bought it in 1972 from Redmond. It was actually, it was the Redmond donation that had the rider on it. Interestingly enough, even with that rider, in 72, I can't remember. I had the superintendent at the time on my head, but I lost it. But they, from what I can gather, paid full market value for it, paid $25,000 for it. So at the time was a pretty good price for 2 acres. Yeah. So, so it's been ours since then. So we've had it for,
What were they? Do you have any?
I think they've done a little bit of what we've done out of it, made it just a kind of an extension service for different programs.
Someone must have been excited about this for some reason. To
Yeah,
believe that back in.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you had any history with that property and the people before, but yeah, it's
Board member Steve Keaton, that actually attended school in that particular.
Yeah.
school. And it was sort of like, there was originally an outhouse on the property, so you could have biohazard waste there. Plus, then the restrooms that they used was actually then, it did have a sewer, but the restroom was outside of the building itself. You had to go to use the restrooms outside. Later, some got converted inside. But in all of that story early on, was the same kinds of issues. Redmond basically wanted to download it. Sisters bought it at that time, used it as a school for a while, and
then it became a preschool. Then it sat empty for 1 year, I know, and then the Heart of Oregon came into it. So, and again, some of the challenges. So there is an easement to a common well, but what regulations have changed in the county. So right now, all the potable water out there is shipped in because Heart of Oregon has more kids than the allowable exception under a common well. So the properties for potable water is supposed to have its own well head. So right now they're actually bringing water in and doing that. They have running water and they can do stuff with it, but it's not considered potable from the county standard. So again, to make it usable, you're talking mitigation of all the issues and then digging a well or getting a well, updating probably the transformer and the power. So again, a lot of challenges. After I took a breath and settled and talked with Melinda for a while, I calmed down on the letter and realized it's maybe as much an opportunity, and you tried to make some lemonade. So I think there's some lemonade to be made in looking at that property and how we move forward. So I intend to, and we'll talk about this in May as well, but I intend to continue to gather information on what that looks like. And hopefully we'll have more to report in the May meeting.
Kurt, I have one more small piece of information
Yeah.
to share. I'm not sure Edie ever knew this because I didn't tell her, but the biggest complaint that we got was from the Bridge Club from here and Sisters of the Women. And they were upset because the educators, the people doing the preschool and other things there was hoarding out on their bridge times. I dealt with that complaint.
Now that you remind me, yes, I do remember that.
With the dang preschoolers.
So. I don't know, I feel like we should we should definitely research our options at this point.
Yeah.
Are you currently, are you in contact with a land use attorney?
I am not,
So I mean, I'm not an expert, but I've done quick claim deeds myself
Mhm.
without an attorney.
okay,
And without anyone alive to contest it. And you have documentation. It's a 1-page file. So I just saying, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's a big deduction from the property.
so.
I mean, there's all the other ones.
Yeah, so
of
it
course.
may not be. I do know that what we have is the original deed, and so my understanding and where we got to in the research with the first attorney was a review of the file and the deed from the original owners and some research as to where they were from previously. My understanding, you have to do a public notice in the paper, show evidence that you've made an effort to contact somebody connected to the owner. Again, I'm not a land use
Yeah,
expert, I'm
I
just
don't-
giving the advice that we had before. And then if there is no response to that, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
Again.
know, right.
I'm just telling you
I think it's worth to ask
yes.
without hiring.
So I'd love to get that information from you if you know somebody also who does that work. Other than this person, because usually in Central Oregon, there's not a lot
So
more.
basically, it's the same attorney.
Might be.
Okay,
I mean, I don't know. We'll see if it is.
right.
I'd love to hear who you've worked with or,
I didn't do it here. This was.
Okay.
different.
well, I'll talk to Melinda and we'll get some advice.
Yeah.
Again, Melinda knows her. Melinda's real question was also, and you're right, well, the evaluation of that is, what is the impact on the value of the property?
Right.
The real question is, the district have an interest in fighting? Would we rather look at a outcome of working with someone for them to take ownership of that property
Right.
with a fair compensation for it, right? Or do we want to fight that process and do it on our own and make it an asset that then we work through? I think we have one of those two options.
Right, I guess I'm not looking at it as a fight, I just look at it as we should get the value of whatever it's. actually
Yes,
worth.
and we're working on that.
And that's the way I look at it, and if the intent is to use the structure, there's still value in the structure.
Yeah, Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
It's not a tear down, it's.
yeah, minus the mitigation. Yeah,
Of course.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying. is
Yep.
We should get the value of what it's worth.
yes. Yeah.
We shouldn't just fire stuff. It's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I know well, we've done an estimate, I mean, a well estimate is about 60 grand. Updating just the heating system, not the transformer, but doing mini splits to get rid of the oil, it's about 30, 35. And again, these are numbers from a couple of years ago. And then
Right.
asbestos mitigation is roughly 100, so we're about 200. And that's not the paint issue, right? So that's also an estimate, could be worse on the well, depending on when they hit water, when they don't. So and again, that's not
I get it,
massive compared
it's
to
a headache, and
Yeah.
I'm sure as a district, we have no interest in doing upgrades, but if a simple claim deed
yeah,
adds value, it's worth it.
Yep.
It might not be.
Yep.
Other than that, if the structure is still viable, then we should.
and
sell
what
it.
you're saying with the settlement, if they were doing the quick game, that's not a big detractor from the value.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying.
So I think what I will keep doing is I'll just keep working through the process and bring more information back as we keep, I mean, really, it wasn't even on the agenda to start with, but after that came in, I'm like, well, I guess we better talk about that one too, because we're gonna have some conversation. So so we've reached out, our attorneys reached out to their attorney. We're trying to get a list of those detractors plus an overall evaluation, so we can have a conversation about what value we're talking about.
Sure.
Yeah.
So do we need to make a motion at this point?
No, I mean, this is just work session, right? So this is information. I'll bring more information. Hopefully I have more information to bring in the May meeting. And if there's enough for the board to, to give me direction, then we'll ask for it. If not, it may still just be more information, right?
We still have a year.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, exactly, we still have a year with that partnership, we're still
Yeah.
serving kids, right? And so all of this is projecting for a long-term kind of end.
Right, and the only reason I'm suggesting that we pursue the quick claim deed is also you received a letter from an attorney suggesting we don't have rights to the property based on its use. So it's in our best interest to pursue it in a way that it is our property
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever this attorney is kind of forcing that a little bit.
I wouldn't disagree.
But on what grounds? Like, it's 100% being used for education.
But if we get the rider removed, then it's a done deal.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter. It's a moot point. And anyway, it adds value immediately.
But, yeah.
I get it.
It's not
I
on-
agree,
it's
but
not
you
on
know,
fire,
people sue people for the funniest things.
Yeah, it was an interesting day to get that and to like, okay, well, you're wrong.
It wasn't like a subpoena, or it wasn't.
No,
like a
no.
thing, it was just a strongly worded, strangely, but strongly worded, but it's
Yeah.
not like.
Yeah.
They're not coming after us, they're not
No.
suing us, they're just.
No, but I don't,
If this is a process that costs an attorney 2 hours at $600. It's a done deal,
Yeah.
like that, and that's. My experience with these is, yes, they'll be publicly posted, you're not required to do it.
Yeah.
It is just posted. I mean, that's broadcasted out
Yeah.
from the county.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement of you because you filed it.
No.
I could be wrong, but.
Yeah. What, again, and I think, we'll re-engage. I was of some understanding that you had to post it somewhere where you knew the last residing descendant of the property was, because there was that rider, it was donated by that folks. But, even that is a little bit of time, and posting it in a local paper is not an expensive, right, proposition. So I don't, so more to come. I'm just informing the board of,
Sorry to throw
This-
more work your way.
no, the salve across the front bow of the Cloverdale ship, and we'll keep moving
Perfect.
forward on that.
Great.
And then, again, I don't know if you guys want to just take a little time and digest. I sent an email out requesting their proposal for representation. And as you can see, we got a variety of responses, right? And level and what they said. And so I think, again, opportunity for opportunity for you guys to review the information, have discussion, and then, we can, make a plan for, and make decisions more formally in May as a work session. I think, we could look at even setting up a time to interview folks if that was what the board wanted to do as well.
Dude, did you read through these?
Yeah, I did. I read through most of them quickly. Interested a lot in the things that were interesting to me were the differences in both the evaluation and in the fee. All right, there were differences in all of them. So that was interesting to me because those are the things that we're looking at.
And those are the important numbers.
Yeah, right. And I think that's the, so I think it'll be interesting to get the board's perspective as well, I think to some degree, the evaluation is a little bit interesting because there isn't a place with 5,400 square feet and an acre and a half. Although the last one, I believe, proposes to separate them to maximize the potential, which is also what I guess the councilman kind of suggested the other day. That the vacant lot over there be split off as a separate, and the historic building with its kind of the response to being a historic site. I think the last one that came in was the one that acknowledged that it's on the historic registry. Which we've now affirmed and know, so
Is, what,
4 of them,
Of course.
There's 4 of them?
yeah.
when do we
Two of them are real small.
take action on this?
Okay, yeah, I got it. And then-
Well, we can, I think we can take action on it when the board feels comfortable. I think that's the discussion. If the board feels we should move forward, then I would say sooner than later, so we can actually get it in process.
Maybe next time. Right?
We are May 7th. Yep.
Yeah,
I was looking at, what was the ask?
The question was, what do we want on this? Well, this is information. My hope is that between now and May 7th, the board would be ready to have a direction. And I think if whether that's Asa and Jeff or 2 board members have interest in interviewing the folks, maybe getting some questions together and having some dialogue, or if it's just based on your evaluation of the I mean, really, it's up to the board in this regard, because it's looking at a capital asset and that needs board approval. So just like when we hired a contractor and you guys were the governing board of that, kind of similar. It doesn't quite meet the level of the RFP process, but at the same point, it's going to be enough of a commission that requires 3 bids. So you guys could just decide, but I think in a community like this, having some dialogue, maybe chatting to the folks might make some sense. And again, what would make sense to me is maybe a subcommittee, a committee of 2 of the board might do that and then bring a recommendation. Or if the full board wants to, that's fine as well.
I mean, this is a big asset, so I feel like everyone should be involved. They should have the opportunity.
Yeah. And then we wouldn't have to, if we want to slow it down and not make a decision in May, we can take time and, then we're looking not until June, which is we're already into summer, which is, I think, I mean, okay.
And
There's
I'm,
a lot of information here.
What kind of conversation have you had with Parks and Rec people on their other building? Their building.
So that's a different conversation that I will bring up in May, actually will be an ask, and that ask will be that for us moving forward, I was gonna ask the board to give permission to use the Lundgren Mill money to improve that. And we walked it with our staff. As it is situated, it doesn't fit our needs in that it doesn't have enough small private office spaces for the nature of the work that we do. And so we're actually working, well, Amy has an architectural background. So Amy is actually taking some of the thoughts from our group, and then our hope would be, Chris Mays was the original architect of that, he's still in town. So we would work with Chris to update the plans, file with the city, but that again, all takes money and investment for that move to consolidate the campus. So there is some cost involved in that, but again, net long-term gain.
and how much is that in that fund, and how much of it are you proposing to use?
So there is 164 left in there. Now, the board had talked about using 50 of that as a commitment to the rooted homes process, which is still in process. So there'd be 116, 114 available to start doing that work. We have some money in deferred maintenance as well, but this is more of a capital improvement. So I think it would be, would make more sense to go from that fund. And if Sherry's not here anymore, but if I was speaking for Sherry, she would like to eliminate one fund, right? If we get rid of, if we expend the money from Lundgren Mill, one less account, she has to keep carrying forward every year.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
And is the intent or the hope that SPRD gets a bunch of money and then they purchase that building and we purchase, because we don't own that building, correct?
We don't own that building, so
we're
it's
doing
gonna be,
capital Improvements on it, on a building we don't own, so I just.
Yeah.
just.
So just like they did with ours, right? They did.
Of course.
Yeah, so what the long-term hope is, same thing I shared in the council meeting the other day, is that my hope is that would go swimmingly well for Park and Rec. And that they would be able to go to the community to say, we don't have any land, we don't have any property. It would make sense for us to negotiate the purchase of that property. And then to float a bond with the community. It would have to be successful, that they would purchase that from the district. We would take that money, put it in an account, purchase the 15 acres for expansion in the UGB for future growth. And then whatever was left would be to look at deferred offset costs of in 2030, when our 2015 maintenance bond rolls off, we're gonna have to replace the roof at the high school, replace the roof at our middle school, as well as other things in the district that need attention. So that deferred maintenance bond in 2030 will roll up, and the money, the proceeds outside of that purchase would be able to offset some of those costs.
But what about that building? So we wouldn't purchase it?
We would negotiate that in the sale of the property, right? It would be a part, yes,
Okay,
it would become ours.
okay.
Yeah.
You didn't
Yeah.
say that part. So I
Sorry,
just
yes,
wondered where-
yes, yes.
But otherwise, I don't know if it's improved. The most immediate updates would not necessarily be capital improvements per se, it'd just be like tenant improvements, right?
Well,
Like building
it's
a
a-
wall,
it's
taking
capital
down a wall, like,
Right, it's still.
I mean, it's an expense, but it's more of like a.
Yeah.
What's that called, like?
Occupancy?
Yeah, but no, there's like a specific term where there's like, because I'm a tenant, I'm going to make these updates or ask the landlord to make these updates, like. The allocation for that, but anyway,
Yeah,
I'm just
it's
saying,
still-
it's like, that happens all the time when.
Yeah.
Buildings, so I don't, if we're talking about like replacing a roof or replacing like the HVAC system or something like that, like.
Well, he's
That's-
talking about $116,000 in improvements is what he's talking about. So it's worth knowing
Yeah.
if we're going to improve a building, that we're going to keep at $116,000. That's all.
My point,
That
like, I
was-
don't know if it would count as an improvement in terms of like, yeah, putting a wall to be
So-
around.
So I agree with that conversation. I would say this, if we don't improve that space, we shouldn't sell this and move,
Right.
because it doesn't fit our needs.
Yes, right.
I mean, that's
I
the,
agree. I'm just
yeah.
saying, it's not surprising that we would need to put
Oh,
some
yeah.
money into
Yeah.
a building that we're going to take over, whether we own it or not.
Yeah.
We,
I mean,
yeah,
the other option is we could leave the money in Lundgren Mill, take monies out of other operation accounts, and then reimburse that when this sells, right? I mean, it's, but again, I think the cleanest piece is,
No, I just wanted to, I'm not saying, I'm not against it.
yeah.
I'm just wanna understand
Yeah.
the long-term goal, because
Yeah.
the other way to look at it is, okay, we need to improve it to move in. Do we need 116,000 or do we need 50? And if we weren't keeping it,
Yes,
if
And-
we're keeping it, it makes perfect sense to me.
and that I'm not 100%
That's why-
sure on right now, because I'm just informing what's in the account.
Right.
Because we still have to finalize plans, get bids, right? I mean, we're just in a rudimentary start, recognizing it's gonna cost some money to move forward, and are we willing? The ask has to be, are we ready to invest in that move? And it may be more than that, it may be less than that amount, but until we get into the process and we actually get the plans, so we have to pay for the architect, and then file with the city, and then put them out to bid, we won't know. And again, I would anticipate they might be under the amount that we need to even do. Again, it might be like this, we need at least 3 bids. If we can get them, it may not be enough to do an RFP. All right, so more to learn on that.
Right, and I guess being as a board, I feel like we need to know what you're asking for.
I'm gonna ask for the board to approve use of Lundgren Mill monies to start
So you're asking for all of it minus the 50K we've already allocated? Or are you asking? I
Well-
mean, I guess that's the question is. You don't know how much it's going to cost.
Well, I think we're gonna be more than 116. I
Or
mean,
you think it'll be high?
well, I mean, if, at the next meeting, we'll have some rudimentary plans that we've been talking about. I mean, it's not a lot of structural, but it's, cause that building, the way it was built, it's a lot of non-load bearing walls that we would be adding to make office space. But then you need to do drop ceilings, you need to soundproof it. If you walked in that, there's only in the offices do they have the drop ceiling. So there's work to be done if you're going to have private confidential conversations and create office space. And so I just don't think in this market, in 2015, I would have said we probably don't need that much, but in this market, I think when you get done with architectural fees and permits and construction, I think, yeah, we're gonna be at that amount. So,
You so.
Yeah.
Really?
maybe. But we're still not, I guess the point being, we're gonna need to start investing to get the answers to that. I mean, if it comes back and it's way beyond that, well, then that might be a non sequitur as well, which would also be good to know and start that process. So, it could inform, we may have to pull this off the market, right? I mean, so we need to kind of invest to get those answers. So that'll be the conversation.
So out of curiosity. I'm just thinking, like, why did we start the process of looking at selling before we started looking at the process of the cost of moving?
Because I put the cart before the horse.
Okay, thank you.
This is there, because this, if it could sell faster, I think it could sell as is. To someone who would honor the history, take the full lot, let them divide it, let them do what they want, you know what I mean, like I think there are options, and then with some sort of long-term closing of some sort, right, where we would have, maybe that's part of the negotiation is like, we would like 120,000 as down payment, please, like some sort of 10%, and then we use that towards.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't think it's a net bad thing, like.
I think when I was misremembering some of the space over there, and when I walked it, and then also had the follow conversation with Brett, who's kind of our project manager oversight, right, that we've contracted with. I was informed that no, any construction, even if it isn't load bearing, is gonna have to have approval when you have fire safety, public space, right? So I was thinking, oh, well, none of those are load bearing walls, it's gonna be, right, that's why you shouldn't have a superintendent making construction decisions. That's, so, yeah, so then it was like, oh, well, we better have that conversation as well. And fortunately, still have a fund that is intended, you know, to be able to do those things.
So forgive my ignorance, when a capital improvement like this, or anything dealing with land. Does the board approve plans? I mean, what happened with the new elementary school?
Well, we hired the contractor and all
Right.
that process came through. And then I believe you guys designated me as the person to work
Right.
through all of that,
Yeah, we
right?
just approved.
Yeah, and we had the public open houses, we had open,
Well, I was just-
conversation,
Again, I'm
so.
just asking
yeah.
for
So same thing, it depends to some degree on the level. I would, from my perspective, I'd rather have the board more involved than less involved, because it is a capital.
Right.
It is a capital improvement, it's a capital asset, it should be part of our long-term plan. I believe it's a part of our long-term plan of consolidating that campus, which we're the last piece of that as a central office. I do also believe in looking ahead that we could put a rider with any one of these realtors that if it's Roundhouse coming forward, then they get a processing fee and that's it, because Roundhouse was in touch with us before we did anything about the potential of purchasing it. So I think we should, structure the agreement with whoever we choose, excluding, and then there was one other food-based organization that came to me, so I would say we exclude those two, and then we get a processing fee if either one of them came forward as the buyers, because we've already had previous conversations with them.
My only concern actually is if it doesn't sell fast. And we go into a recession, the value of this building could drop
Yeah.
fast. And then what does that mean for our transfer, or do we still sell it at half the price? I mean, that's where my concern is. I would rather move as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And get into a contract personally.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, nobody knows.
No,
The future, but it's clear that we're on the edge of something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that we should drag our feet, but.
yeah,
I mean, we've seen in like historically, like unless it was like the big crash where everything just kicked off, like it's not suddenly gonna drop.
I think my crowd moment was a little bit of, even though the SPRD building is bigger, when we did the walkthrough. And then I started to dig in, realizing it's gonna take a little more to make it work for us,
Right.
to be suitable for us to do business out of. And so that's why it's the end conversation that I'll be coming forward with. I mean, again, not here, but having dialogue about, on May 7th, I'll be asking for permission to use lumber mill money to start moving forward on that process.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, at least for the investigation process, to
Yeah.
find out where we end up.
There's not-
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because obviously it has to be functional.
Yeah.
But if it comes back and it's like $400,000, then I'm not sure how we deal with that without selling this first.
Yeah,
Maybe it is what she said, is we ask for 20% down.
yeah,
So we have enough money to make that transfer smooth. I don't want to think, but we need to know. for
Yeah.
sure.
and part of that will start with investing into an architect and then getting plans through the city. Once we get approved plans, we'll be able to get it out to bid. So,
Can I make a comment?
yeah,
Having worked in real estate, it is not unusual for the seller to have exclusions, as you were talking about, for anybody they have spoken to ahead of time, ahead of listing it.
Yeah.
A realtor is not going to volunteer that information because they certainly don't want you excluding anyone.
yes,
But you need to stand your ground. If you've had bona fide people that approach you, then they need to be excluded from the
Yeah.
realtor fees and the transaction fees.
Yep.
That would normally apply to someone who comes forward after it's listed.
yes. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm the one I've talked to. They might try to come, we might have a second meeting before we even get to the board meeting. Right? I mean, I've already had one sit down, well, I've had one initial interest and one sit down since then, since the board has directed me to get more information.
Yeah.
I've since then had a meeting with a group that's interested. So, yeah, so we'll keep working through that process. And so, I mean, by the 7th, we may be asking the board to make a decision, or we may be asking the board to work through a process with somebody. I mean, I think that's the real conversation was getting understanding of the variance and evaluation, because without this, we're all kind of shooting in the dark about what this property is actually worth and what that looks like. And so I think, again, this is a good first step. And I would say whoever the realtor is that we choose, we at least, if we choose them and we have our own person, then we just look at a fee reduction, because they still need to process the pay. I'm not a realtor, so they'll still need to process the paperwork, right? I mean, we need to have someone who knows what they're doing to work us through those steps.
Just one quick question then is, by May 7th. The ask of us is that we'll have reviewed these documents, and we will have a recommendation as to whether or not we want to engage, interview, or continue the process with.
Yeah.
So that's, can we have discussion as a board in that meeting? Because I feel like going into that meeting, we might have different opinions about who.
We can, if someone makes a motion and then that's the time, would
Well,
it be
I-
questions or comments, right?
I think just like when we onboard a board member, I think if we feel like we needed another work session, that work session could be organized before the meeting, which could include inviting each one of those folks to come have a conversation with the board.
Yeah, I mean, this person didn't even tell us what their fees are,
I,
or
yes.
even what the property value is.
yeah.
So I mean, there's like nothing to compare here.
Yes, I know. I think so they came and, to be fair, they came and visited with me and walked the property to see it. And I said, well, you know, what I would recommend is that the board at least interact with the people who submit one so that they would have, you know, and I think they just submitted that to get it in so that they would be included. Because again, the conversation was around, this is kind of a unicorn. It's hard to have comps for this. There's a lot of variables. What does that look like? Again, it was also happening over spring break. So for everybody, a difficult time to hit a timeline and be around. So I think Amy and I can organize another work session that involves inviting them to a conversation.
Yeah, I think we need that.
Okay.
We would do the official budget meeting and the.
No, I think we do this before the May 7th meeting. So Amy will reach out to you guys on what time would be a good time
Busy
to
month.
look at it. Yes, there's a lot going on. Hey, I can tell you, I agree with that. And we just hired a principal.
Hey.
All right, and we have another one. He signed his contract today, so Justin Nicholas is officially gonna be our next principal at the middle school. And we're in the middle of the opening for the elementary school principal, so I feel you, it is a busy month. For a lot of reasons, so, but Amy and I Amy will reach out on potential dates and we'll get that moving forward. Okay?
Not the 23rd.
So,
Yes, Asa, yes.
no, I mean, my only concern is getting in a pickle with this property either not selling or the value dropping in our move and then being financially
Right, that's, yeah.
messed up.
I think there's risk no
I
matter
think
what you
I
do.
agree with you, but
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's saying that, no, we shouldn't, or.
Yeah,
that we
I mean,
don't.
we'll just have to reevaluate it.
The other piece of that is that, so I would say, if we invest, we move, this sits empty, the harm is it sits empty.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean, we don't,
Right.
as a public agency, we're not paying property taxes on it. It's not, right? I mean, we want to make sure we've got it heated, so we're not breaking pipes and doing those things. So there's some cost, but by and large, it's not a massive cost if something goes the wrong direction. Yeah.
We can still keep the potential move somewhat separate because we have some funds to do something. We're gonna figure out
Yeah.
what that is.
Yeah.
This is still a project that needs to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't need to confound them too much.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I agree.
And we always have the right to say no, if the property value isn't what we want out of it, that's our right, right? Say,
Right.
no, we can't do that, and we end up holding on to it. It may not impact the move, right? I mean, yeah, or we're there and this sits and, cause honestly, I think we're gonna serve our families and our staff much better at that location just by proximity. It is an effort for people to get to this end of town now.
Seeing how much staff we'll have,
Yeah.
having to truck over here for various reasons.
So,
Oh, it's brutal,
Yes.
the
I
traffic.
know, they have to go all- I know, they have to go all the way from-
Hey, there's very little traffic just walking across the parking
I
lot.
would say having two roundabouts makes it easy to turn right.
Or left.
No, yes, but you have to go around about.
Keep turning
Yeah. And I think there are challenges, but it's actually also a really exciting time for the district. I mean, in a lot of ways.
I'm excited to be a part of it. This is huge, and that's why I think it's really important that
Be thoughtful.
we as a board talk to these people if we can.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big deal.
So again, Amy and I behind the scenes will try to coordinate, and I'd say probably more Amy will coordinate, but also look at maybe some potential questions that could be a dialogue in there. And we'll set it up and we'll keep moving forward, planning for that May 7th official meeting.
Maybe before you leave, I try to get when you can't, because the last time I tried to set up a meeting with the city, it was a nightmare trying to get your schedules. So let's just try to, before you leave, just get the days you can't.
Yeah.
And then I'll figure it out.
I mean, if you have a time frame of, not a time of day that you think it would probably be meeting, that would help.
Yeah, well, and then we can always use Zoom as well. I mean, people can attend in that frame as well, especially if it's more of a Q&A kind of dynamic, at least you can be present that way. So I think we have some options to make sure we can get everyone included.
The only wrinkle here is that, I've done business with, at least one of these realtors.
So we may have to look at
I
a
may have to
conflict.
Recuse myself
Yeah.
from interviewing that.
Okay, all right, we can figure that out. I mean, I'm trying to think, I haven't used any of them. Look at that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not voting, so I don't have
You don't have
that. All right, so connect with Amy. Are there any other, I mean, those were the topics for this work session, unless there's anything else the board has questions about under those topics?
I can't think of anything under this topic. Anyone else?
All right,
Fun times.
I think we're good.
Adjourn?
All right, meeting is adjourned at 6:54.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, now,